So you didn't read the 50 pages of character information, mechanics and character statuses that I sent you before session? Did you at least write down all of the paragraphs of your class and race features? You had an entire week, man. Were you playing Warcraft again? Hello and welcome. I figured today we should be talking about the horrible mess that is Dungeons and Dragons. Now, before you go into the comment section ready to unleash your arsenal of words upon me, let me preface this. I love
refrigerators.
D&D. If I don't get at least 3 hours of playtime every weekend, I just don't feel whole, you get me? But I love it so much only because I have already undergone the tedious process of learning the basics. Let's say you are a new player, which is highly improbable since you clicked this video, but nonetheless, you're a complete newbie. You and your friends stumbled upon the concept of tabletop games and want to spice up your Friday nights. Most probably at least one of you has had some interaction with it in the past, or even has game experience. That guy is doomed to be what we call the Forever DM. Now the rest of the players will have to go on an adventure of researching for countless hours how classes work, what actions you can take in combat, what are statuses, and how do some mechanics work. It takes forever to understand just one class. Imagine being the dungeon master and having to understand or memorize all of these concepts. You all eventually finish your character sheets, the DM is ready with the story, and you all start playing. The first half an hour will probably just be the dungeon master's narration about a shitty fanfic he has written about some fantasy game the players have no clue about. After that is over, the players will spend at least an hour of their lives with the most awkward and cringe interactions amongst each other. And by the end of the session, the DM will incorporate some sort of tavern fight, so that the players can get a taste of how freaking long it takes someone to take a turn in combat. Everyone still had fun. More sessions come, everyone gets better at their role, and when everyone has enough experience and knowledge, a different problem arises. The rule lawyers. There's always gonna be that one salty guy who thinks the DM did him wrong and is gonna ruin the entire fun for the night. Believe me, I've gone through this myself. I was the salty mofo, multiple times in fact. You get past that as well, and eventually the Forever DM gets bored of the sessions, and the campaign ends without a satisfactory ending. And so the cycle continues forevermore. I 100% guarantee that there is at the most a single guy who will be watching this video able to say he has finished an entire campaign from level 1 to 20. So what exactly are the problems? The most obvious first problem is in regards to new players. Of course, if you are a long time player you can enjoy a session to your heart's content. But if you want to get into D&D, it feels like a colossal task and you will most probably be put off by the amount of PDFs you have to read beforehand. The second problem, which is almost as important, is the actual rule system of D&D. Sure, you've got everything well defined, some things may be worded poorly, but you can ultimately play by the rules. And still, in a world full of possibilities, players and DMs alike are restricted by these sets of rules. Obviously, there are other problems such as players being unable to work well with each other or simply being unable to roleplay. But there is no point in delving into the human element because honestly, you can't change it. Some people are shit, take me for example. Now, how can you fix said problems? You can't really, not as long as you play normal D&D. As a new player, you'll always have to read up on way too much information from the get-go and overload your brain with all of that crap. It's not impossible to do, and so many people have done it, but why shouldn't we change that boring, tedious process and make it more accessible to the masses? For this reason, I have personally devised and even playtested a variant of Dungeons and Dragons. What does it entail? As a player, you grab a race, a class, a sheet of paper and a pen, and you can already play. In like what, 1 minute of preparation? You might be thinking I'm shitting you and there's no way you can have a campaign like that. There have to be rules, information and other stuff. Do you want to know what is the most important rule to me when it comes to D&D? The rule of cool. As long as everyone has fun and nobody feels left out, you've won at D&D. There are only 2 obstacles impeding your way to have uninterrupted fun while playing this version. Because there are no rules, the DM has to make everything up on the spot so that it's both fair and satisfactory for the players. It's not impossible, but it is a pretty hard task. This way, the DM can actually feel like the creator of their own world by making their own rules. And the second issue is that you need ingenious or inventive players, full of imagination. Because there are no stats, no traits for your class or your race, you also have to make everything up on the spot as the player. As long as the DM finds it reasonable, it should be fine. This way you can avoid both unnecessary information and fights over rules. Or you might just end up with a party of soggy adventurers who die from a giant rat. Obviously, there can't only be good things. There have to be downsides as well, which I will not shy away from pointing out. You will have mechanical problems. How does HP work? How does armor class or the actual combat work? This is yet again up to the DM to figure out and inform the players. For example, if you are not familiar with D&D, how combat works is that you have an armor class number which determines how hard you are to hit. The higher the number, the tougher you are. And in order to hit or be hit, the individual has to roll a die which has to match or surpass that armor class number. I figured in my own campaign that instead of having AC, both the attacker and the defender roll their dice. If the attacker rolls higher, they land a hit, otherwise they don't. This way you can even determine the effectiveness of the blow based on the difference between the dice. If the defender rolls a 4 and the attacker rolls an 18, it is going to be highly significant. Then I'd attribute damage not on an HP basis, but rather on a wound system. And this was just an example. You can do this in every way you want. All of the mechanical concepts should be in your hands as the DM. This way you have more varied sessions from one DM to another, and you resolve the obnoxiously long combats as well. Because let me get this straight, combat in D&D feels like the most tedious and most boring part of the entire game. The worst is when you spend the entire session for a fight and you don't even finish it. There's like 3 to 5 hours of looking through your papers and choosing the action which has the most impact. It's crap. As I've said, my concept is not flawless either. For example, more and more mechanics will begin to add up for the DM and they will be impossible to keep track of. But it should be helpful to new players to some degree. It is hard to have a game with so many mechanics in real life, compared to a video game where you are introduced to everything step by step. I wanted to make this video because so many people miss out on the amazing fun that is a D&D session, and anyone who is a fantasy enthusiast should have a chance to play. And I also wanted to rant about D&D, but that's not really important. But this has been all for today. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion, and if you did, your support by either subscribing or checking out my Patreon page would mean a lot. Until next time, stay strong.